Welcome to Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. Now let's join our host, Tom Shorkey.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm your host for today's program, Tom Shorkey. We've had numerous interesting individuals from our community over the past year or so on the program, and today we're delighted to have someone who has grown up in our community and has lived here for a long time and has had many interesting experiences. It's my pleasure on Conversations to welcome today's guest, Mary Beaudua. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you.
Now, Mary, I usually start our conversations with, well, where did people grow up? And usually it's anywhere in the country, but you're going to tell me, where did Mary Beaudua?
Okay, I grew up on Kennedy Road, 1831 Kennedy Road. It was Weidenbaugh Road when I was real young, but then the Weidenbaughs moved to town, so then they were going to put up road signs. My dad was on the St.Clair Township Board, so he said, well, there's no more Weidenbaughs, let's make the road Kennedy Road. So they put up Kennedy Road signs. And anyway, I grew up on a farm. It eventually was 154 acres. It wasn't that many acres at first, but then my dad bought more. So my sister and I were farm girls.
Now, farm girls on Kennedy Road, and obviously, which I think I just put two and two together, your maiden name might have been Kennedy.
Yes, it was.
So Mary Kennedy from Kennedy Road. Now, for people who have spent most of their time in town in St. Clair, if you wanted to get out to Kennedy Road today, what would be a couple of directions you might give somebody to find the old homestead?
Okay, go out Vine Road, and don't turn on Hurst Road, but keep going on Vine, and then Kennedy Road only goes to your right, and it only goes between Vine Road and Newman Road. Or you can go out Rattle Run Road and turn on Vine and get to it.
And what about if you're out on Wadhams Road out by the gas station and the old Stuckies? Can you kind of get at it that way?
Oh, yes. Just go Newman Road to Kennedy. Yes, just a half mile probably.
Now, when you were Mary Kennedy of Kennedy Road growing up in the late 40s, early 50s in St. Clair, how many of those roads were paved out that way?
Not very many. Not very many. Wadhams Road was Mitchell Road, and all these other roads were different names too, and there wasn't many. Rattle Run Road, I'm sure, was paved when I went there to country school. But anyway, I started out in country school at Kennedy Road. I was the last Kennedy to go to Kennedy School. That was the corner of Wadhams and Newman. It used to be Mitchell Road. Then they closed it in 1946. Then part of our farm was in the Bell School District on Rattle Run Road, so then we went there.
Did you go to country schools until what grade?
Through the 8th grade. My sister went through the 7th grade because they closed the Bell School in 56, so she had to come to town in the 8th grade. I got through the 8th grade at Bell School, but she was a few years younger, so she didn't make it through country school.
Now, for our older viewers, they're a little bit familiar with the concept of country schools, but if anybody's under the age of 50 years old, they're saying, what do you mean country school?
Yeah.
And would it be fair to almost liken it to the schools like we would have seen on TV on Little House on the Prairie, where didn't matter what grade you were in, you were all in the same classroom?
Right, right. Kindergarten through 8th grade is where we went. So everybody was here at everybody's lessons, and it was, just 40 people or 30 people and all the grades.
In one teacher?
In one teacher, yes, one teacher.
And many people swear by the education in those old
yes,
country
because
schools.
you heard from the other classes, so you could do that. You could be educated that way. If you were in kindergarten, you do like I did, first grade work in kindergarten. So, just by listening.
It was time to go to high school. Where was high school at that time?
That was 6th Street in St. Clair.
Well, it's funny. Our studio is now in the back of what most people refer to as the old middle school, but unbeknownst to a lot of late arrivals in the city of St. Clair, this was the high school up until about 60 or 61, I think.
61 was the last graduating class. My sister was the last graduating class here, and then 62 was the first one out on Clinton, the new high school. And the old high school, I believe, was built in 1923, I think it opened.
Now, Mary Kennedy from Kennedy Road, who went to the Kennedy School, is now at St. Clair High School on 6th Street. Tell our listeners a little bit. A teenager in the middle 50s in St. Clair, that was way before urban renewal. Like, where were the hangouts for teenagers then?
Well, there was Burgess's Candyland, where a lot of the high school kids worked after school and stuff, where you go in and get a soda or a sandwich or ice cream, whatever. There was a pool hall where the boys went. There was the movie theater. There was the shrimp boat. People swam in the river back then, because there are pictures from the old days of jumping off diving boards into the river. And of course you went to basketball games and football games. There wasn't a lot of sports back then, but there was baseball, football, and basketball, and there was dances at school. Every grade had some dance sometime, and there would be proms when you got to be a senior. Oh, and there used to be junior senior banquets. So there was things to do.
Sound like happy days to me.
Yeah, right.
What does Mary Kennedy do after she graduates from St. Clair High School?
I graduated on Thursday night. I started work in the Diamond Crystal in the purchasing department on Monday morning. I worked for Roy Kletcha Sr. and Dick Johnson, R.O. Johnson. He was really involved in the boat races and the carnival, Dick Johnson. He talked on the phone year-round to get things going about the carnival and the big boat races back there in the 50s.
And probably in the 50s, I would say there was probably a significant percentage of population worked for the Diamond.
Oh, yes. Just about all of St. Clair always, it seemed like, retired from the Diamond. One way or the other, you worked there. That was the big company, naturally, in town.
Well, now you're working at the Diamond, and I think you told me a friend of yours said, hey, I've got a hot idea for a date for you. Tell me who that was and how that worked out.
Bernadine Brzezowski, she was when I first started working there. And she had graduated with my future husband, Bill. And so then she bugged Bill in March of '58 until he called me. And we went out, and that was it. And then we were married in October of '59.
So you married Bill Beaudua, another St. Clair kid. You were a country girl. Where did Bill grow up in St. Clair?
On Gough Street. We say Goofy Street, but anyway, Gough Street.
Gough.
Yeah, Goofy Street. He graduated in '53 from St. Clair High, and then he went in the Air Force, so I didn't know him till he was done with the Air Force.
Now, and you had told me a kind of an interesting story about the home that the Beauduas lived in on Gough Street. What was it prior to being the Beaudua residence?
It was an ice house for the Diamond, so the insulation was
Sawdust.
sawdust. Insulation was sawdust, so that was interesting.
Well, and that was back in the day when, and I'm sure it was on the Pine River. I don't know, maybe it was on the St. Clair River also, but that's what they did in the winter.
Right,
is they cut
right.
chunks of ice, stored them in these houses with these sawdust insulated walls, and that's what refrigerated people through the summer.
Right, and there used to be a big building on Pine River right across from our boathouse that was an ice house for the Diamond. It's not there anymore, but that was a big building that was ice house. Maybe when, like, the house on Gough Street was sold, and hard telling how many other places were ice houses and turned into houses.
Well, and you know, I think what's interesting, and your husband, Bill Beaudua, I mean, it's almost like you were the first lady of St. Clair for a number of years, because Bill was a long-time fire chief, but how much time did he really put in the fire department?
Yeah. Well, he was 48 years, and he was a fireman before he was a husband. His dad, of course, was either 55 or 56 years, so I always say Bill was practically born at the fire hall. So, and he loved the fire department, and you have to be a good fireman. You have to love what you're doing. So, and he was chief, I believe, for 17 years.
So he, between he and his dad, they had 100 years together of volunteer fire work in the city of St. Clair, and then, of course, culminating with 17 years as the fire chief.
Right.
What neighborhood did you, and somewhere between Kennedy Road and Gough Street, you guys found a neighborhood. Where'd
Right.
you end up?
We rented 1905 Vine from October to July, and then we bought a house that was a state trooper, was transferred. His name was Black, 1170 South 12th Street. So I've been on 12th Street since July of 1960.
Wow,
There's only
57 years in one spot.
Yeah, there's only one family on 12th Street been there longer than me. Ralph and Jerry Mayhew have been there longer than me. So we're the old timers for 12th Street.
Well, you can talk about being an old timer, Mary. However, growing up in the 50s, raising your children in the 70s and the 80s, when they pan that camera around the city council meetings in St. Clair, it often picks you up sitting near the back row.
Yes.
What motivates you at this stage of your life to attend council meetings?
Yeah, well, we used to go, when Bill was alive, we used to go, and years ago the city superintendent used to encourage the department heads to go to the council meetings, and Bill would go. And then since he's been gone, Nancy and I go for the entertainment, or I shouldn't say entertainment. Anyway, we go just to make sure we know what's going on in town. It's interesting. We sit in the back there with DeLoss Bollier and Billy Westrick, and sit back there and listen to see what's happening.
Well, as a 57-year resident on 12th Street and president of the council, how come you never ran?
Oh, that's not for me. That's too much.
Yeah.
That's too much. Somebody else can do that. Somebody else can do that.
Mary, you were here before, during, and kind of after urban renewal. What's the good and the bad of St. Clair going through? I know St. Clair and Algonac went through urban renewal, and many people don't realize that have come to St. Clair in the last 30 years or so that there, other than Palmer Park, there used to be stores on the riverside of M29. What do you see as the good and the bad?
Yeah, well, you could buy everything in St. Clair back then, even farm machinery, because our Mao had farm things even. And of course, back then there was gas station on every corner. There was grocery stores. There was everything. The old town, there was just everything. Gleam's Meat Market, everybody everybody wishes we still had Gleam's Meat Market. Yeah. Oh, if only we could make Gleam's bologna. Wouldn't that be something? And you could buy clothes and furniture. Frederick's Furniture on the river. There was the Greek on the river that had the candy store. Well, there was everything. Doctors, everything. Thompson's. Well,
Thompson's was a hardware, wasn't it? And then when urban renewal came along and George Thompson became a furniture guy.
Right. And Mr. Pulowski had grocery store. Well, at one time he even had Pool and Kittendorf's, which I know that's a long time ago. And then it was Tyler's. Now it's just a place to buy drinks, I guess. But anyway, there was everything. And then when urban renewal came, there was lots of stores. But then all of a sudden it changed, because then you went up to Fort Gratiot to the mall, or you went down the other way to the mall, and there just wasn't there isn't all the stores here in St. Clair. But you can get your hair cut and you can buy pizza in St. Clair, for sure.
I do think there is, as you used to say, a gas station every corner. Yeah. Now that you can get a haircut or buy a pizza on almost every corner, it seems.
Right, that's for sure. And there's good restaurants yet, yes. So.
What kind of, do you have any memories of the St. Clair Inn?
Oh, yes, that was a wonderful place to go for a special meal, or when Bernie and Margaret Kuhn would have an anniversary party. Of course, Bill and I would be invited to that, and then I've been to weddings there, or if you wanted to go out for dinner, for a special dinner, you'd go to the St. Clair Inn. My mother, sister, and daughter all worked at the St. Clair Inn through the years, so a lot of people made their living at the St. Clair Inn too, so it's a shame.
Well, you sit in the back of those council meetings. Are we going to see that St. Clair Inn get revitalized or not? What do you think?
Oh, they keep telling us. We'll believe it when we see it.
Good. But it was an integral part of this community for so many years.
When I was real young, my dad's oldest brother lived Muskegon area, and he was an executive with well, Norge division of Amana or whatever. Well, he and his wife would come here and stay at the St. Clair Inn. So he would come to visit his mother, and we lived with our grandmother, Kennedy. And so we have pictures of our uncle and aunt on the boardwalk, more or less, behind the St. Clair Inn. So, you know, that's back in the 40s. It was, well, and they used to have every convention, Ford, Chevrolet. It was a busy, busy place. Oh, and the Silver Stick kids would come there and stay. It was popular, very popular.
And I think you're still a hockey fan. Is that true?
Oh, yes. We have to watch those Red Wings, and we're hoping they get a little bit better.
Yeah, they could use a little fine-tuning at the moment. We'll just call them young at this time.
Right, yeah, they are young. Oh, we enjoy. And when Bill was alive, and many years ago, well, before before our youngest daughter was born, it was the Flags in Port Huron. We had season tickets. We'd go up to the McMorran every time they played. And so I've been a hockey fan for years.
Well, I'm glad, and you mentioned the Flags. You know, a few weeks ago I had the chance to have Doc Emmerich on the show here, and he talked about, well, that's what brought him to the St. Clair area, was the Port Huron Flags, and how the guys lived in the community, and they were, if not more popular than the Red Wings for our area.
Right. Oh, it was interesting. So, like I say, we went, previous to 1969, we would go to every game. We'd get a babysitter for the older two girls, and we went to the games. It was interesting. I'm glad we did such things. It's memories.
It is.
Good memories.
Who's, and obviously you're going to tell me Bill Beaudua, but who's been influential with you in your life? Who are some people that you've had that kind of gave you some words of wisdom along the way?
Well, I don't know. Except I always remember coming to town to the 9th grade and having Mr. Bowes, and of course he was there for generations. And for some reason, some of this English I didn't really understand in country school. But I got to Mr. Bowes' class, and however he taught it was neat. So anyway, that's one person I always think about, Mr. Bowes.
Well, Frank Bowes, he was a legend in his own time here. He spent a lot of years in this building that we're taping in today, teaching English. He was quite a guy.
Yep, he had my kids too, of course. And anyway, he was here a long time, and he was a good teacher.
What about if somebody said to you, young family said, well, we're thinking about moving up to your area, why should we consider St. Clair?
Oh, yeah. Well, everybody loves the river, naturally, and the schools. Everybody thinks East China schools are good, which they better be.
Yes,
they better be. And you were part of it for years. So, anyway, yeah, a lot of people. Well, okay, back to my dad died in 1966, and of course a farmer. We had 154 acres. Well, then about 1972 or so, people started coming out from the Detroit area and buying 10 acres. My mother never advertised anything. People came buying. And the first people that bought, Milas Allison, who used to have Murphy's, and he had BTM, Milas and his family came, and they bought the first 10 acres of our farm. And of course, he's still there. But that was, like I say, 1972. People were coming out of the city like droves, buying land.
Well, and I think if you do look back on the 50s and the 60s, if you got outside the city limits in the St. Clairs and the Marine cities, there were those small family farms where, you know, every mile was somebody else's farm.
Yeah.
And now you drive out those same roads, and now they're paved and they're not gravel. And
there's 20 houses.
Yeah, there's 20 houses instead of where one farm used to be.
There was 3 places on Kennedy Road when I was young. Now there's probably 20.
Now there's a big social event that occurs in St. Clair every year that you've played a little bit of a part of. Tell us about Oktoberfest at your church.
That's wonderful. St. Peter's Lutheran, 7th and 6th Street and J Street, between. Have Oktoberfest. Ted Pavlik comes there every year, and people really love dancing to Ted Pavlik. We have drawings, and prizes, and et cetera, et cetera.
Is it still going strong? I mean,
Yes,
you've done that for quite a while, but is Oktoberfest still pretty popular?
done it 5 or 6 years, and I think this last October we had the most people there. They earned the most money, so we have a good time. We help selling tickets and doing things.
Is that because of the good sauerkraut, or is it because of Ted Pavlik's band?
Ted Pavlik, yeah. Yes, they do have food from Neiman's, because of course Neiman's go to St. Peter's, so.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they get the food from there, so that's good.
Small town in action.
Yes. Oh, and the Neiman family does so much for everybody. If you ask them for something, they do it.
When we, it's going to be quite a few years yet, but when we have you back for your 100th birthday party,
okay,
what would you like Mary Beaudua to be remembered for?
Oh my goodness. Well, I worked at the Diamond. I worked in the schools, in the cafeteria, in the kitchens. I worked in the kitchens for 10 years. And that was enjoyable because when those first graders would come through that lunch line, that was so cute when they would come through for the first time. Because back then the kindergartners went home at noon and stuff. And then, of course, fireman's wife for 48 years, and always helped out at the fire hall. And we had, in 1986, we started having a garage sale at the fire hall, and they're still doing it. I'm not involved. I don't have to be. I did my share. But through the years, excuse me, when there'd be a fire all night and it'd be 60 below wind chill factor or something, my daughters and I would keep going back and forth with hot coffee and cookies. We always kept cookies in the freezer at the fire hall. And that one winter, we had that awful fire. St.Clair Highway was a house. Sunday night. Okay, the next Sunday night, the bowling alley in Marine City burned. That was a cold one. I think it was 1982, 81 or 82. And then in the hot summer, girls and I would take water or lemonade or whatever, because when you're out at a fire forever, you know you're going to get hot and exhausted. And then you'd cook breakfast for them. I'm talking too much.
No, you're talking great, and it's, I think, to paraphrase, the answer to my question is, it sounds to me like Mary Kennedy Beaudua, local farm girl, country schools, St. Clair High, Diamond Crystal, married Bill, fire department was as much part of your life as it was his, I think, by the sounds of this. And very proud of your community, and you still care deeply because that's why you're in the back row at those council meetings.
Right, right.
I think for our listeners at home, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Mary Beaudua today. It's been insightful as to a little bit about what this community looked like, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And you can see someone who has had a viable role in assisting the community spirit that is alive in the Blue Water area. It's my great pleasure to have had Mary on with us today. And if you are interested in watching this program, go to our website, watchctv.org, click on shows, then click on conversations. And any of the conversations we've had over the past year will be readily available to you at home. If you have someone that you know would be an interesting guest for our show, don't hesitate to contact us through our website. And on behalf of watchctv.org, Cable Channel 6, downtown St. Clair, thanks for watching, and thank you, Mary Beaudua, for being our guest.
Okay. Thank you, too, for inviting me.
You've been watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. If you have an idea for a future conversation, please contact us at www.watchctv.org. Thanks for watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey.